Hello and welcome to the Literary Lair. It's our 7th anniversary! I am blown away that this show that started out as me sitting in front of a blank wall, blatantly ripping off people who were vastly more talented than me, has lasted for 1 year, let alone 7. 7 years! For comparison's sake, that's the same length that the entirety of The Next Generation, minus the films, lasted for. And like Star Trek The Next Generation, bar a few select good episodes, the first 2 years of this show are unwatchable piles of garbage. Although, that comparison is really unfair. This show might have started out bad, but at least I didn't make up the long ladder. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I appreciate all the people who come back week after week to watch me complain about mostly licensed tie-in novels. Speaking of licensed tie-in novels, as is our yearly tradition, commemorating that my first ever book review was a review of the Third Doctor Target novelization, Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion, this year we've finally made it to the final novelization of the classic era. That we'll be talking about. Next year we move on to the movie, and then, since they've actually went ahead and made Target-style novelizations of select New Who episodes, we'll move on to those until we run out of them, and then I'll figure out something. But I've got a few years to suss that out. Anyway, the 7th Doctor. Check out my Love and War review for an overview of his character, but I'll say this before we start. Having listened to more Big Finish and having seen more of the character in the time between that review and now, he's slowly become one of my favorite Doctors, but then again, they all are. Anyway, while the last 2 years have been novelizations of lackluster episodes, or in last year's case, a novelization of a lackluster episode that never got made, this year I wanted to go back to good episodes, mainly because a lot of other people have talked about the bad entries of McCoy's run, and I really want to talk about Remembrance of the Daleks. Which reminds me, in the spirit of this being a special episode, and because I didn't have a set wardrobe in the first episode, I want to make a minor modification for this review. I'll be right back. Okay, that's better. Oh, and if you're wondering why I neglected to dress up for last year's review, there's a simple explanation for that. You couldn't pay me to wear the Technicolor Nightmare coat. Incidentally, check out the official BlackScarabFilmZ Patreon for the new goal of changing my review outfit. Yeah, there's no way it's ever gonna get that high, so I'm safe. Remembrance of the Daleks was the inaugural story of the 25th season of Doctor Who, and kicked off the 25th anniversary celebration, bringing stories that were of a much higher quality than the previous season, but it and Season 26 were unable to stave off cancellation, as this would be the classic era's penultimate season. It's also one of the best episodes of the show, but there was also a lot of hinting at the Doctor's past and the beginning of the Cartmel master plan, much of which never made it on screen. Like Castrovalva and the Nightmare Fair, it was novelized by the writer of the episode, in this case Ben Aronovich, and as he states in the introduction, he intended to not just add he said or she said to the script, but to give a backstory to what we saw on TV, to expand upon the episode as it was, and make it even better. A noble goal, and also his first time novelizing, so we'll see how it went for him. I think this is enough prologue. It's finally time to get into Remembrance of the Daleks. I gotta admit, I sort of miss when they used to title these Doctor Who and the episode title. The book was published back during Target's run, although that's not the edition I have. I couldn't resist getting my hands on the 50th anniversary edition from 2013, where old Doctor Who books were re-released with snazzy new covers. The original cover was actually, it was much like the Nightmare Fair, but doesn't feel quite as crowded. It's got the 7th Doctor and Davros, which is a shame because that's a huge spoiler, along with an Imperial Dalek, a Renegade Dalek, and the Special Weapons Dalek, with the 7th Doctor era logo up top. The 50th edition is much more subdued, with an image of the 7th Doctor facing away, but slightly towards the reader, with a black Dalek far in the background. It uses the classic Doctor Who logo and just looks really good, and it preserves the big reveal towards the end, so it's got a leg up on target. Would have liked a bit more action, or maybe see Ace bashing the Dalek with her baseball bat, but it's still good. Anyway, let's get to the story itself. The book opens up with, oddly, a scene from a different episode. We see the events directly leading up to Ian Chesterton and Barbara Wright first entering the TARDIS, but from the perspective of the First Doctor, before we transition to the Doctor and Ace in Shoreditch in 1963. The Doctor has brought the TARDIS back to the site of his first televised adventure, a fitting start for the season in order to finish the work he started. This actually goes a long way to explaining why the First Doctor, who was very strict with Susan, and didn't have the adoration for Earth that later incarnations would develop, would let Susan go to school on Earth. In reality, he was busy finding a way to store an advanced piece of Time Lord technology on Earth. The Doctor notices a surveillance van and sends Ace off to get some food while he investigates. In Harry's cafe, Sergeant Mike Smith sits and eats until he notices Ace walking in, and helps her get the attention of the proprietor as the Doctor notices a strange little girl watching him. In the surveillance van, Professor Rachel Jensen keeps an eye on the readouts. The Doctor pops into the van and startles her, but also shows that he knows what he's talking about, so she takes the help. As they talk, there's suddenly a distress call and the van pulls into action, picking up Ace and Smith as they talk outside the cafe. There's something going on at Foreman's Yard on Totter's Lane, and they rush to figure out what, with the introductions also happening since Group Captain Gilmore, Jensen and Mike's boss, has no idea who the Doctor and Ace are. They arrive and find a soldier with wounds that indicate that he was killed by a death ray, something that doesn't yet exist on Earth. Well, it would if Tesla was appreciated in his time, but alas, it was not to be. The Doctor reveals that whatever fired the weapon is trapped in the yard and Gilmore's people, countermeasures, go on the attack, but the Doctor already knows what they're dealing with. A lone Dalek. And if you've seen any amount of Doctor Who, you know that an entire army of humans is no match for a single Dalek. But this isn't just an entire army of humans. They have the Daleks' greatest foe to guide them. With the Doctor's help, they manage to take it down, and the Doctor tells Ace all about the Daleks and what they're capable of. The Doctor heads into Coal Hill School to follow a strange transmission, and finds more Daleks, but they're different than the one at Totter's Lane. This leads the Doctor to discovering that there are two factions of Daleks, Imperial Daleks and Renegades, the Renegade Daleks being aided by Ratcliffe, a Nazi collaborator who hates the non-whites and wants to make England great again. That's not what he says, but it's the spirit of the message. Both sets of Daleks want the Hand of Omega so that they can gain the power over time that the Time Lords have, which obviously the Doctor can't allow to happen. The Doctor, being a master manipulator, starts to put his plan into motion, including burying the Hand of Omega, as was his original intent. Ace asks about it, and he explains it, as we're treated to a flashback featuring Rassilon and Omega arguing over the Hand, a remote stellar manipulator that helped create the power source for all Time Lord technology. Rassilon you probably know, he's been in the modern series, but if you've been watching this show long enough, you'll remember Omega as the adversary the Doctor fought in The Three Doctors, which I reviewed way back in 2015. In fact, using the Hand of Omega is what got Omega trapped in the antimatter dimension in the first place. But there's a third figure in this flashback, the Other, who was also there and knew a great deal about the technology, like the Doctor does. How about that? The Doctor sets his plans into motion as the Countermeasures group attempts to save their world from the Double Dalek debacle. Ooh, that's fun to say. Double Dalek debacle, Double Dalek debacle, Double Dalek debacle. The two Dalek factions converge and start to fight, with the Doctor trying to sabotage both factions, since he had counted on Daleks, just not two rival factions trying to outdo each other. The Doctor uses the Hand of Omega to modify Ace's baseball bat, and gives it cosmic powers, enough so that when Ace returns to Coal Hill School to get her anachronistic boombox, that, the Doctor said, could rupture all of time and space if left there, she's able to bash a Dalek to death with the aluminum bat. The Doctor enlists the help of Professor Jensen and Group Captain Gilmore to take down the Dalek pilot, while Ratcliffe's Daleks take control of the little girl to use in their battle computer, since children and their imagination are able to be weaponized by the Daleks. Makes sense. If anyone could weaponize the purest thing in the universe, it would be the Daleks. Ace also learns that Mike is not only a spy for Ratcliffe, but he's also a big ol' racist. Group Captain Gilmore arrests Mike, pending a court-martial, while everyone else continues to work against the Daleks. Ratcliffe's Daleks take control of the Hand of Omega, but they're eventually destroyed and Ratcliffe killed, and it's eventually snapped up by the Imperial Daleks, under the command of the Dalek Emperor. Eventually, the Doctor confronts the Dalek Emperor, who, unsurprisingly, turns out to be Davros. Would have been a bigger shock if he wasn't on the original edition's cover, but what do I know? The Doctor does his famous unlimited rice pudding, etc. scene, or in this case, and so on, as is written in the novelization, and Davros activates the Hand of Omega. But the Doctor was planning for that. The entire operation was a gambit, and any action the Doctor deliberately took was to ensure that the humans wouldn't end up hurting themselves in the crossfire. The Hand of Omega makes Skaro's star go supernova and the Dalek homeworld is destroyed, one of the first major acts that leads into the last great Time War, before the weapon turns on Davros' ship and destroys it as well, though Davros makes it out in an escape pod like the coward he is. Let's just hope he didn't end up going through a wormhole into an alternate universe where every scene has lens flare in it. Though I'm not gonna lie, I think all of Nero's lines would have been way better if they were dubbed over with Davros' voice. Mike escapes custody and steals a Dalek device, being chased by the little girl, who is brainwashed and has superhuman powers because of the Dalek influence. Ace chases after Mike, and they're both confronted by the little girl, who kills Mike, while the Doctor confronts the last remaining renegade Dalek, the Supreme Dalek, and tells it that he's got no backup, no home planet, and in the face of being a Dalek with no purpose, it self-destructs, severing the Dalek brainwashing in the little girl, releasing her. Mike gets a funeral with no military honors, and before they leave, Ace asks the Doctor an important question.
We did good, didn't we?
Perhaps. Time will tell. Always does.
We'll be right back with more of the show. Shopping for glasses can be a pain in the ass. On the one hand, at a lot of retailers, especially the optometrist office, you can get price gouged and spend upwards of $300 for a single pair of standard glasses. I know I did. On the other hand, there are online retailers that do it cheaper, but with glasses, you really can't buy them without seeing how they look, because if they don't fit right or they don't look right on your face, you've got to return them and deal with that hassle. Which is why it's fortunate that today's video is sponsored by Warby Parker. Warby Parker makes vintage-inspired eyeglasses starting at just $95, which is an absolute steal for glasses, and they do something that I've never seen any other online retailer do. They offer a home try-on, which allows you to, if you go to warbyparkertrial.com/BlackScarabFilmZ, to pick out 5 pairs of glasses that they'll send to you absolutely free with both shipping and return postage paid, and once you get them, you can try them on, and if you don't like any, you can just send them all back. And if you find one you love, like I did, you can just add it to your cart, put in your prescription, and buy them. $95 might seem like a lot of money for a pair of glasses, but the first pair I bought was from the eye doctor's office, and it was close to $300. So $95 is a friggin' steal, and these are much better quality. Just the other day, I knocked them off my face, and they fell down the stairs, not a scratch on them, and that's 100% true story. Plus, Warby Parker is always debuting new styles, so there's literally something for everyone. Plus, they have brick and mortar locations in case you ever need them adjusted. So if you're in the market for new glasses and want to do the home try-on, go to warbyparkertrial.com/BlackScarabFilmZ. That's BlackScarabFilmZ with a Z. And we're back, and... Wait a minute. This isn't my screwdriver. The Doctor and Ace are naturally exactly in character, though because we get to have a lot more introspection and since we have an omniscient narrator instead of just visually seeing all the characterization, they feel even more real. We know their exact motivations, and Ace especially gets to shine. Just the way that her stomach turns the moment she sees the racist signage at Mike's house. I know I felt the same way, and it felt extremely genuine, a credit to Aronovich's talent. That's why when you have a classic episode like this one, and a writer who's not only gifted in screenwriting, but in prose as well, you can create something brilliant. And he lived up to his promise. This isn't just the script with he said and she said thrown in. This is an entirely different, yet still awesome take on the story. Obviously, I've got no complaints about the Doctor not acting right or acting strange, because he acts precisely how the Seventh Doctor acted once he started to become the chess master manipulator he was destined to be. He gets a few good moments in this, namely with all his asides where he expresses his true feelings, and of course in his sparring match with Davros, because he is far more than just another Time Lord. Same with Ace. I especially like the part that calls back, or in the case that the episodes actually aired a season apart, with this one coming first, forward to Ghostlight, and mentions Ace's friend Manisha's house being firebombed, and Ace's retaliatory burning down of Gabriel Chase. It gives a new dimension to Ace's horror at the racism, considering that someone she was close to was a victim of the same bigotry and hate that Mike Smith and Ratcliffe openly embraced. The book is also able to develop the countermeasures team a lot more too. That's another good thing about novelizations. Despite having a great home video market, you can enhance the original story by including context that otherwise would have never made it into the story. We knew a little about Gilmore and Jensen and the gang, but not a lot, and most of what is known comes from the countermeasures audio dramas from Big Finish, or books that have been released in the intervening time, and that's all fine and good. But this gives us a lot more development on them, especially Jensen. And apart from learning that Jensen was Jewish, which I don't know if that was ever touched on in the episode, but we also learn that there's a bit of chemistry between Jensen and Group Captain Gilmore. And I'm not talking about Jensen's scientific expertise. I mean, they absolutely got married at some point after this, because there's definitely something going on there. Allison and Mike are also written well, and Mike is even more despicable than he was in the episode. And that's because Aronovich went in and added subtle references to hint at his true nature. The book is also able to develop Mike Smith and Ratcliffe's racism. That was partially explained in the episode, but it wasn't overt. Since we get to see into their heads a little bit, it's much more nauseating here, and it evokes a lot more emotion. And there's a lot more development to the Daleks. We see a lot from their perspective and hear their thoughts and lack of emotions. There's also a fair bit of Dalek history to color the actions of Davros and the Renegades throughout the novel, especially a lot of background for the Special Weapons Dalek, which just sorta looked cool in the episode, but in the book became an actual character. It still looked cool, though. Davros is also perfectly in character and as nefarious as always, and his argument with the Doctor is good, even if some bits from the televised episode didn't make it in. The novelization has very well done action, and the descriptions make the action that was great on screen even greater, because it lets my imagination do some of the work. The effects in 1988 weren't bad, but they're not half as good as what my mind's eye can dream up. Fitting for a book that puts so much stock in the imagination of a human child to also benefit from imagination. The destruction of Skaro, which was just an explosion in the televised episode, goes on for a page and a half, and it is utterly chilling. Even if the Daleks are the most evil race in the universe and are Nazi allegories, You can't help but feel a little pity for them like the Doctor has. And that's not the only time either. We talk about the battles, the descriptions, all the technology. It all creates a rich world that's even greater than the world that was depicted in the episode. The pacing is also really well done, and because it's not 4 episodes and it is instead one long story, the pacing is also able to keep the steam for the entire run of the novel, especially because of all the extra bits of introspection added in. We jump around a lot, but it never feels like it halts the progress of the story. The story is always moving forward towards the goal, and even knowing the ending, since I've seen the televised episode multiple times, I was still on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next. Remembrance of the Daleks is one of my favorite episodes, and a close for my favorite of McCoy's era in general, although I really do like The Curse of Fenric too. And Battlefield is pretty good because it has the Brigadier in it. Anyway, this is one of the best novelizations yet. Definitely my favorite Target novelization I've ever had the pleasure of reading. It's equally as good as the episode, and then some. It does a great job of advancing the Cartmel master plan in a way that the televised episode couldn't, by actually showing us the other alongside Rassilon and Omega, and Aronovich is able to portray the events so perfectly that any deviation from the original episode is welcome, because it's been enhanced. I highly recommend this book, especially if you're a fan of the episode. Even if you've seen it before, even if you've seen it a million times, it is a whole new experience. The Pokemon Emerald to the televised stories Ruby and Sapphire, if you will. Aronovich reached his goal of expanding and improving his already nearly perfect Doctor Who episode. I've never read any of his original work, but if he even put a modicum of the effort that he put into this, it's gotta be even better. A bad book is nice to poke fun at, but I wanted to really enjoy the final classic novelization I had, and I couldn't have picked a better book. Like I said at the open, thank you for sticking with me this long, and hopefully we'll be here in another 7 years, checking out a novelization of a 13th Doctor episode. And if you think my math is wrong, just wait a few years and it'll make sense. Trust me. But as for next time, well, I'm not actually sure what it'll be. It might be our first Patreon-sponsored video game review, or it might be something else in the event I don't finish the game in time. That reminds me, I ought to get back to playing it. See you next time. Forgot this. Well, we did good, didn't we? We did good. We did good, no. Accent. We did good, didn't we? We did good. No, I'll just show the clip.